My name is Stephen Mythen. I'm the Deputy Vice-Chancellor. I'm also Pro-Vice-Chancellor for Research and Innovation. And I think this is one of the real key events of the university calendar, where we both celebrate and congratulate all of our PhD researchers undergraduate school through the vehicle of one lecture by one of our most distinguished graduate students. You may have noticed already that we are filming the lecture this evening. I think that will go on through the questions. If anybody's got any concerns or questions about that, please contact one of our support staff that are in the room. Now, the lecture tonight is known as the Fairbrother Lecture. It is given after Jack Fairbrother, who was our first PhD student in the university, awarded his degree in 1929, the start of a very distinguished tradition that no doubt will go on for many years into the future at this university. It gives a current, or maybe a recent doctoral researcher, an opportunity to present their research to a wide audience. And I'm delighted that this evening our PhD researcher is Rodrigo Zenin-Franco. Now Rodrigo is undertaking his PhD in computer science, but he's co-supervised by Julie Lovegrove from the Department of Food and Nutritional Sciences and Faustino Juan from the Department of Biomedical Engineering. Rodrigo is originally from Brazil, and he undertook his undergraduate degree at the Federal University of Itajuba in Brazil in electrical engineering. So you can immediately see that Rodrigo personifies two of our great strengths at the university. We're global, we're international, and we're interdisciplinary, and no doubt he'll also demonstrate how we do such excellent research within our graduate school and our PhD studies. Through the European Commission's Erasmus Mundus programme, Rodrigo had the opportunity to study in Greece and in Spain, and then here in Reading, where he gained his MSc in Network and E-Business Centred Computing. In 2015, he began his PhD, and is now due to submit in, I think it's a matter of months, isn't it? Or maybe weeks. One of those two anyway. He's already had 2 journal articles published. A fantastic performance. He's supported by the British Nutrition Foundation and the Brazilian National Council for Scientific and Technological Development. And we, of course, we give our gratitude to those organisations for supporting Rodrigo and supporting the university. So now, with no further ado, let me introduce Rodrigo to the stage to give his lecture. You can see the title there. So, Rodrigo.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Steve. Well, I'm really glad to be here, and it's good to see some friends. It's good to see some study volunteers that came here as well to see. So, without the volunteers, it would be impossible to present these, and without the friends, my life in the UK would be a bit more difficult. So yeah, thanks for coming, thanks for the friends, thanks for the study volunteers. And I'll be presenting now the results of my PhD, and I'm about to finish, as Professor Steve just said. So this is what I've been doing during the last 3 years. And the topic of my research is online personalized nutrition advice. But I would need to just present a bit about myself so that you can understand the motivations and also the focus of my research. As Professor Steve said, I'm an electrical engineer. I took my undergrad degree in Brazil and started in 2000. And then I realized that I was more into computer science than power systems, and then I started to work to Experian, which is, by the way, is a British company, so it's the biggest credit bureau in Brazil. And I came to Reading in order to have an international experience and also to improve my qualification. Then I returned to Brazil, so just being alternating between Brazil and the UK for a couple of years. Returned after the study leave and start to work for Accenture, a consulting company. And again, returning to the UK, returning to Reading. At this moment, I got married in 2012 to be a nutritionist. at that moment, and I saw a couple of opportunities in how computer science and the internet could contribute to this area. So I've seen a couple of gaps in my opinion, and I noticed that I would need to focus in order to do something relevant in this area. Wouldn't be possible to spend 1 or 2 hours in the evening. So I decided to take PhD to kind of try to put my ideas in action. And during that period, I decided for returning to Reading because it's a university with reputation in both human nutrition and computer science. And I plan to return to Brazil soon, just after the PhD. And maybe there is going to be another University of Reading in this timeline in the future. Let's see. So the general motivations for personalized nutrition. We know at this moment that 70% of all deaths globally are related to chronic disease, or what we call the non-communicable disease. So we're talking about 40 million deaths per year. And the main recommendations to address this huge challenge are related to diet and physical activity. But still, although we kind of know that this is true, this is massive evidence of a huge challenge, we still have situations such as the salt consumption or the excess of salt consumption accounting for 4 million deaths globally. So the governments and the public health officers, they are aware of this challenge, of this huge problem, and they're trying to convince us, the population, that we should have healthier diets. For example, here in the UK, we have the 5-a-day campaign, which is great. We do acknowledge this type of initiative. But for example, the 5-a-day was launched in 2003. And after 10 years of this campaign, very important campaign, massive communication, only 1/4 of the population here in Britain meet the recommendations. So what we can see for this data, that we have a huge problem. We have some initiatives trying to approach this challenge or to address this challenge in a one-size-fits-all strategy, or in a more generalized population strategy, and it's not working as expected. So what we can do, maybe if you bring these statistics to this very far type of communication of, for example, deaths globally, if we bring this to a more personalized level, maybe this will be more effective. That's the motivation for personalization. So we're trying not only to bring this type of healthier diets message to the population, but to bring this in a more personalized way. So in that case, for example, it would be very, very nice if every single person in this country or in the world could, for example, have many hours of online of consultation, face-to-face consultation with nutritionists and dietitians. And this is very important. That probably would address part of this challenge, but we know that it's not very cost-effective. So I will not do proper research here, but I would bet that probably if I ask you how many of us, like the adult population, have been to a face-to-face nutrition consultation, I would bet that probably less than 10% of this audience would raise the hand. I've never been, but I'm married to a nutritionist, so that's okay. One possibility to address this is to use the internet, because it's democratic, it's very low cost, and we have more than half of the population, the world population at this moment, with access to the internet. So for example, only the number of smartphones at this moment is 2.5 billion, so it's really massive. And every time that we think that this has been available for 20 years or so, this is potentially one tool that we can use to deliver online personalized nutrition advice. And that's the motivation to try to use the internet in a way to deliver personalized nutrition advice. This slide, although very simple, will help us to understand what I've been doing during the last 3 years, because we need to go step by step. We need to understand these together. When we do research, how we start? We need to do a review. In the review stage, basically, we're trying to check if what we are doing is really novel, or if many other researchers have been worked on this and maybe they already came to a conclusion. So in that case, we need to move to a further question or to a different research question. So we start with the review. In the case of using the internet to provide personalized nutrition advice, I will try to explain the other 3 steps with a couple of examples. So you have the usability, the validity, and the effect. The usability, we want to check if the population or if the future and potential users, if they really use these and if they will be happy to use the solution. So, for example, if we create or if we propose a very, very complicated system to assess nutrition, for example, we could ask people, okay, you go home, you use this app, you start to take pictures of every single food item that you eat, and then you carry a scale with you, and then we record every time that you have a meal. Maybe you have a very accurate data of the diet intake, but it's very unlikely that the population will really carry scales with them in order to weight the foods. So that's not very user-friendly. So the user acceptance in that case would be very low. And if we break this part of the process, the rest is will not work, because basically we don't have users. So what's the point of the application? What's the point of the solution? Also, if we think about the validity, we could say, okay, be happy with this application. We will provide some advice that you will be really, really happy to follow, eat whatever you want. So that's not valid from the nutritional perspective. So again, maybe users are happy, but the validity of the application from the nutritional perspective, from the health science perspective, it's not working. So that's also not the case of a successful research. And what's the final stage is the effect, because maybe we have something that the application is user-friendly, the app is user-friendly, the validity in theory is okay, so it was scientifically sound, but when we try this with participants, it doesn't work. So we were expecting that the application would work, would encourage healthier diets, but then we tried this with real participants, with humans, and the actual diet is not modified. So it would be a valid research, so basically trying to encourage healthier diets, but the effect was not detected as expected. It's valid, but that's not what most of the researchers want to have as an outcome of the research, because yes, it's good when you say we found a way that doesn't work, but it's better when you say we found a way that works as expected. Okay, let's start with the review then, and I will try to present to you how we've been working in these 4 steps of the process during the last 3 years. When we think about diet apps, we're not talking about rock science, so you can think, there are loads of diet apps out there, and that's true. So we need to find some good research question. We need to find something that we are really improving the knowledge in the field and really contributing. So what we know at this moment, we start with a review of existing apps that are available to the population in this country and also worldwide. And yes, diet apps are popular. There are at least 21 apps only in Play Store for Android device with at least 500,000 installs. So the population is already using these, and we know that there is a huge interest for diet apps. That's good. We confirm the interest, but what's novel? What their focus at this moment is weight loss and calorie counting. So it's a way to address the problem, but it's not the way that we are working on, as we will see. And they are using a specific nutrition assessment method, which is called food diary. And we will see in a minute that that's not the only option, although it's a valid option. And they are providing very limited personalized nutrition advice. What they are doing at this moment, it's basically collecting data regarding dietary intake and providing the data visualization of the diet. So for example, you can count the calories and can see the nutrients that you consume in those specific foods that you enter to your food diary. So we've kind of confirmed that there is gap in this field. There is interest from the population. So we were in a point that was, okay, good to start, let's keep the plan. Before explaining the whole process and then show you the app at the end, we've reverted the order and I will show you the app in a 2-minute video. So this is the final version of the application that was developed, and I will explain you the process. At this stage, the user or the participants of our study have completed the screening form and also after creating the account in the website. So at this moment, we already know the gender and email address of the participants. Then we initially requested the weight and presented a physical activity questionnaire, which was quite simple, a set of around 10 questions regarding the physical activity level of the participants so that we can have an idea if they were like sedentary or if the work and the leisure or the sports were valid or not. After the physical activity, we start the proper diet questionnaire, which is called the food frequency questionnaire. It's a list of 157 items popular in the region, in this case in the UK, and we ask the participants how frequent they ate those items, for example, once a week, and for each item that they select, for example, that they have consumed during their last month, we present 3 portion size images here, and we repeat this cycle 157 items because this is the list of popular items, food items in the UK. This process takes around 14 minutes, and this is the foundation of the calculation, which allows us to provide the personalized report. So this, for example, it's an example of personalized nutrition advice. We know the change in the diet, we know how is the physical activity level of the participant, and we provide the feedback. It's not the intention here to learn in a 2-minute video, so that's why I will spend the next 20 minutes explaining you this process. So this was the food frequency questionnaire, the app which generated automatically this diet report or this nutrition report. In order to develop this app, we need to fulfill the usability stage, which is checking if the users are happy with the app or not. As I mentioned before, the food diary is not the only nutrition assessment method. When we think about these methods, we can divide them regarding the time. So the retrospective methods, we they rely on memory. So basically, we ask the participants what they have eaten during the last 24 hours, for example, or during the last month or week in case of food frequency questionnaire, or we can use the prospective methods such as the food diary. In this case, we scientists, we try to be very, very accurate and to collect like as much information as we can. But we need to remember that there is a trade-off between the accuracy and the convenience. So it's not convenient to ask users to log or to create a food diary for 1 month, because the chance of quitting or the dropout rate in this case would be very high. So we need to consider the convenience as well and have a good validity of the method. How do we do the calculation? So we have these food items. We ask the frequency, for example, here once a week. And in this case, for this specific food item, salmon, we present 3 food items. And for each one we present 3 portion size images. And for each one of them, we know exactly what are the weights, because they were measured before the photos. So we have the food composition table of these items. So it's a simple calculation of the frequency and the weights behind the plates. So we can, for example, have the calculation of this person is eating, let's say, 5 grams of salmon per day on average during the month. So these combined with the food composition table, we have all the nutrients and the energy and other possible calculations that we want to do. But at this moment, we only know the method, food frequency questionnaire, which is different from the popular apps. And we run a study with 20 participants. We have at least one of them here in the audience. I'm very happy that you came. And at that moment, what we were trying to do was to collect some insights from these users, how we could improve the app. And we also wanted to make sure that this app was able to be used by older adults. So what we're trying to check at that moment is the population really able to use these without assistance? Because it would be a shame if you deploy these and try to recruit hundreds of people, but if they're not able to do this at home, so this study would fail or collect not valid data. So we basically gave the tablets to the participants without providing much information and asked them to do their best to complete the cycle so that we could watch them and see if they were able to complete the questionnaire. And also collecting insights from the usability. For example, we had that frequency selection and then the image selection. And after the full image selection, we were requesting the users to click on the next button. And some participants said, oh, this is not necessary. You could select the photo and then move automatically to the next food item, which now, when I tell you this, it kind of sounds obvious, but it was not for us at that time, so that was important insight. And also for the report, for example, initially we had thought about having one tab, a device for you, and another one to check the progress. But out of the 20 participants, we noticed that only one clicked on the second tab, so it would be a shame to have this report divided in 2 blocks and more than 90% of the users at their place, at their homes, checking the progress of the report. So we run this type of pilots in order to check these design issues or these problems in the design so that we can deploy the study to a larger group. So basically, we merged these in one tab, and it was basically just to scroll the page and to see the whole device. So we note that that design was not good. But apart from this qualitative way to check the usability, we have some more quantitative ways to check the user acceptance of applications in general. One possibility is to use the system usability scale, which, by the way, was developed here in Reading around 30 years ago and became very famous in the community of human-computer interaction. It's a list of 10 questions. For example, I found the system unnecessarily complex, which is a negative question, and then I thought the system was easy to use, which is more positive. And there is a way to score the answers here. And out of 100, when the system scores higher than 70, it's considered a user-friendly application, so the usability is good. And just to provide you some examples, more sophisticated and complicated applications such as Excel spreadsheets, they score 56, and a very simple application, a cash point at ATM, scores 82, which is a very high score. So we run this here in the UK with 322 participants completing that diet questionnaire. And at the end, they completed the system usability scale questionnaire, and our application, which we call Inutri, got 77.5. So it was considered a user-friendly application, and it's close to the cash point. So it's quite good to see that it's by the participants considered an easy-to-use application. So the name of our application is Inutri. We also tested in different devices, because those 322 participants, they were able to select the choice of the device that they want at their place, so there's no obligation to use a specific device. And we collected data, and here in this table we can visualize that they have, across the device, they have similar scores, and the completion time is not very different in this device. And on average, we have around 14 minutes to complete this diet questionnaire, which may sound long time. 40 minutes these days is some time. Some people are not very keen to spend much time with this type of questionnaire. But when we think that we're talking about 157 food items, so each food item is taking on average only 5 seconds, and there is the decision-making time during this process. So I would not blame the usability of the app for this time. We're considering 2 clicks plus the decision-making time, so we're quite happy with the result. So good. We at this stage know that the usability is good, the user acceptance is good, but we need to find a way to provide valid, personalized nutrition advice. Otherwise, we're just playing with data and not provide a device that's scientifically sound and validated by the scientific community. How do you do that? At this stage, and because I'm a computer scientist, we need to spend some time trying to find a way that we are not reinventing the wheel in terms of the nutritional science. And there are a couple of diet quality scores out there. Many research groups, they've been working on this for decades, analyzing, for example, national surveys, data that we have, evidence from food diaries or other types of diet information, combine it with health information that could be either disease or even deaths. So many researchers have worked on these to learning from evidence how we can say that a diet is good or not. One possibility, one very well-known diet score, it's called the Alternative Healthy Eating Index, which was not developed by us. It's an American index that we only modify to this experiment, to this study. And how does it work? Basically, we have some food items or food groups that they are recommended. So we want the population to eat more, for example, fruits and vegetables. And we have some food items or food groups that we want to limit, for example, salt and sugar. And there is a way to calculate these based on data from diets using any of those nutrition assessment method. So we can, for example, in this case, out of 100, for each one of these components, let's say fruits, we calculate the amount of fruits, the servings per day, and we give a score out of 100 for the food category. We do the same for legumes, do the same for vegetables, do the same for salt and for sugar. And we can calculate the overall diet score of a specific person. This we credit to this specific index. We've used this index, which, by the way, confirms or strongly predicts cardiovascular disease, for example, which is related to one of our motivations. And after that, we've decided which diet score to use. We presented this application to health professionals, more specifically 16 registered nutritionists and 16 dietitians, registered dietitians here in the UK. We showed the output of the app, like the input of the diet and output that the app would provide to that specific person, and asked them to rate the advice provided automatically by the app. And I will not go in much details here, but out of 5 stars, the nutrition professionals gave 3.3 or 3.5 out of 5 stars. So we can say that even the most qualified professionals in this area, they are partially happy with the automatic recommendations provided by the application. But at that stage, we know the validity, we know that we are using a well-known diet score to provide the advice, but we're not sure if the recommendation is effective. So we run a study called the Eat Well UK study using that food frequency questionnaire. And in order to test the effectiveness, so we are already in the effect stage of the presentation, we measured the change in the diet for 12 weeks with the participants. And I think now's the time to present a very important research concept here. How do we run this type of experiments? Because if we only measure the change in the diet of the group that we recruit in the participant, let's say that we have only one group, and then we see some change, and we're not sure if they've changed the diet because of the app or if they changed the diet because of some external factors which are not under our control. So how do we solve this type of dilemma in research? Because the only thing that we want to measure is this personalized really effective? But the diet is not only affected by the app. Many external factors are in the game together with us. So we use what we call the control group. So we have 2 groups in the study. In this case, 210 participants. Half of them went to the control group and half of them were allocated to the personalized group. They were recruited from the same population, in this case the UK population, and they are suffering the same type of external effects. So let's say that Christmas season, they're eating these more unhealthy food, for example, or the Reading Beer Festival is affecting the alcohol consumption. But these external factors are affecting both groups because they were recruited together. The only difference of the two groups is that the personalized group is receiving personalized device. So with this type of experimental design, we are able to isolate the variable or the factor that we want to measure, which is the personalization, and we measured this during 12 weeks. And how is the treatment in this case? This is the treatment, which is the personalization. In this case, for example, we have one component here provided in that diet score, which is the salt component. This came from the result of the diet questionnaire. And in this example, we know that the salt consumption of this participant was very high. And how do we pick this salt? Because we have 11 components, some positive, some negative components. I mean, some components that the recommended foods and some components, for example, salt in this case that we want to limit the consumption. But this person was not doing very well in this category because the intake was very high, and this was in the list of the 3 lowest scores. This is personalized, the selection of the salt is personalized, and also the food items that contributed the most to the salt consumption. For example, dark salts. So why this is different? This slide is quite important because this is different from the, let's say, 5-a-day campaign or similar campaigns, because one thing is to say eat less salt, and what we are testing here is this type of personalization more effective than just say eat less salt or consume less salt in your food. So that's what we are testing here. We are showing evidence from people's diet to then and show this type of personalization that came from the diet questionnaire. And we provide some suggestions for change and also the rationale, the reason why we are recommending a decrease in salt consumption, for example. So this is the personalization, and that's exactly what we are trying to measure the effect of this type of personalization. So for example, the control group is not receiving this type of personalization, but only generic or generalized population device. And as I showed in the video, this is the nutrition report. We're able to calculate the overall diet score, which is a simple average of every single component. By component, I mean fruit, vegetable, salt, and sugar. We have 11 components. So we present the result for each one of them. Let's see here, for example, vegetables. We do the average of them, and we have the overall diet score, which is presented on the top. And after 12 weeks, they can see their progress for the whole diet and also for each one of the components. So this is the treatment that we are providing in this study, which is the diet personalization report. And this is the happy end of the study, because as I say, although we recognize when we try some strategies and they don't work, but it's much better to be here on stage, present something that works. So with these 210 participants, what we note that the control group, for some reason that we don't know, they slightly decrease 0.25 out of 100 in their diet scores. So we're not sure why, and that's why we create those type of experiments. But the personalized group increased 2.21 points in their diet score. So the average for the whole group was 57.1, the control group slightly decreased, and the personalized group increased around 5% during these 12 weeks. So this is one evidence that this type of personalization is effective. So it's much more effective to have personalization than only having the generalized population advice. And this is a motivation for us and for other researchers to keep investigating how we can use the internet to provide online personalized nutrition device. This is not the only way to do it. Probably there are other strategies to provide personalization. And but we're happy to share at this moment that the strategy that we followed to using that specific score and to ranking the components and presenting the top 3 or the 3 lowest scores, and the way that we've designed the message, that was effective in our study. And we hope to see many similar studies, not only in this country, but also worldwide. And how do we encourage this type of, this was the happy ending slide. How do we encourage this type of dissemination, and how can we try to foster this type of initiatives worldwide? One possibility is to write articles showing what we've learned during these 3 years, for example. So what we mean by open access publication here is that they're publicly available for free. So this example of 2 journal papers and 1 conference paper that are available in the internet at this moment. So we are happy that and also thank the Open Research Fund from the University of Reading to support us during this process. So one way is to disseminate the knowledge that we gained during these years via publications. And also, if other researchers want to use the software to, let's say, deploy the same study in other countries, or even to improve the application at this moment and run again with a different strategy or a more improved personalization, the app source code, which is the term that we use for the code, the software code, it's available so that other developers at this stage could download what I've been working on during the last couple of months in the coding of the application. So it's available for free. You can, or if you're a developer at this moment, you can download it and even sell it for £1 million if you want. The difficulty is that probably someone else will try to sell for £1. So in the free market, it will not work. But it's good that it's available. So it's available for developers because at this moment there's no way to download the app yet, because you're still in this stage of what we call the pre-competitive stage or the pre-commercial stage. Although nothing can block, for example, a startup or a university or our organization to use this app to commercialize or to run other studies. So it's partially available. So it's available for people who know at this moment how to improve it, and other organizations, other companies could, for example, commercialize it at this moment. But there are some steps to be taken before deploying these. So basically, we need one organization to take the next step. But for example, the University of Reading will be using these in another trial next year because it's openly available. And when we follow this type of strategy with open communications and also open software, so that's what we call some example of open research. These open many possibilities, not only for me, but for anyone in the world that want to improve the app, to improve or to try different strategies. So yeah, there are many possibilities. We don't know who, when, and how these will be used, but it's available for software developers at this moment. And I'm coming to an end. I would like to acknowledge both my supervisors who are here, Professor Julie and Dr. Faustina. And I would love to take this opportunity also to thank the Brazilian taxpayers who supported me via CNPq, and also British Nutrition Foundation who supported the nutrition professionals study. And that diet questionnaire, the food image that we used, it came from the Food for Me project, which was a very large research project running here in Europe. And we have also help from Keith and Julia revising the design of the application. And yeah, many thanks to the University of Reading in general, but especially graduate school who supported this lecture. The university also supported us during the publications, and my adoption in the Hugh Sinclair Human Nutrition Unit. Although I'm not a nutritionist, I was very welcome there, and they were very patient to teach some nutrition to a computer scientist. And many thanks to the study volunteers, because without this type of support from the volunteers, we cannot run studies, and we cannot really present this type of initiative to not only to you, but also it's impossible to do this type of research without volunteers. So yeah, thanks for coming. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'll be happy to take some questions afterwards. Thank you very much.